Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and welcome to Starfield. With the release of this massive game, there's a lot of things to learn, of which many things aren't really explained properly or at all. It might be briefly highlighted, but never really explained how you wanted, or again, just not said. So this video aims to give you lots of useful tips that should make your experience a lot smoother while we're all new, and I'm obviously going to be avoiding any real spoilers, so it should be a safe watch. With that said then, let's begin. For our first thing, the game doesn't exactly tell you immediately. I think this is going to be very relevant to you, your background, and your traits in the character creator, so we're going to start with this. When you look at your background and different starting options, you'll see that you'll have your first starting skills. Of course, this isn't going to be the only thing you'll ever get. You're going to need to actually progress some of these skills or get access to them before you can even take certain actions, which it doesn't really say here. For example, one that comes up a lot is theft, like with Gangster here. Theft, while not entirely honorable, is occasionally necessary to discreetly remove property from someone's person. So this incredibly vague concept and explanation is actually pickpocketing. So if you were to pick Homesteader and you literally don't have theft, then you cannot physically pickpocket someone in this game until you have the theft skill. The Bounty Hunter comes with targeting control systems, and this is huge. This quite literally allows you to slow down time when you're aiming, such as when we're controlling our ship and firing at another ship, we can slow down time and more accurately aim and target specific parts of enemy ships. For example, their engines, to slow them down so we can board them. One that we can't see here that's a good another example of these types of skills is robotics, which gives you passive improved damage to robots and so on, but it actually lets you control them in various ways. Like when your skill rank is higher, you get more options. So there's going to be a lot of different interactions, a lot of different passives from these skills and powerful mechanics you simply won't have access to if you don't have the skill and progress it to unlock the mechanic tied to it. Since it doesn't really make this clear when you're first picking your background, I think this is an important one to talk about. Next, here's a quick tip for your mining with your cutter. It's going to hopefully change the process. They don't actually tell you this in the tutorial, which surprises me, but yeah, basically, if you left click, you shoot your cutter, and if I shoot these ores, I'll eventually get them right. But if you hold right click, or say whatever your secondary fire on a controller is, you see these lines in the middle? They'll start to go in the middle and form a complete shape, right? It'll like connect the lines. At which point your cutter is now fully charged. And you'll see at the bottom right where my cutter's sort of charge is, it goes down a lot faster because I'm firing a stronger shot, and ultimately I'm able to mine significantly faster because of that. So if you just feel like mining and you're just running or whatever, make sure you charge it with right click, and then you can start blasting and mining and get it done really quickly, compared to the really weak charging and weak cutting that you'll be doing, since again, I don't think they told me in the tutorial, so there you go. Next, let's quickly talk about a UI thing for when you're looking at the map, you're exploring your system and other systems. It's just a tiny thing, but a useful thing to know. Basically, you can go to any of these places and these planets, and you know, that's fine. But it's helpful to know that these dots that are on each individual place, these 3 dots actually represent a point of interest. So going to this specific planet means there's something there that's worth seeing. It could be an outpost to go deal with or whatever. It just means there's something worth going to see. It doesn't mean that, you know, this planet or other planets without them aren't worth exploring, but it just lets you know that, hey, it could be worth your time. Interestingly, if you zoom in and get some details, there can also be things orbiting the planets and even the moons around them. And if you do see those can also be special encounters you can go interact with, but you'll need to click on those and go to specifically those rather than say the planet directly. But yeah, really strange, subtle UI in that it's just 3 dots. To me, like a question mark or something would be a little bit more like, what's that about? But no, they're using 3 dots, so there you go. Next, I want to give you a very useful tip for navigating the world. Something that I find myself doing all the time when playing this game is opening up the map, closing the map, opening the map, closing the map, wherever I am, whether I'm on the ground, whether I'm in the stars, whether I'm in the ships, whatever it is, I'm constantly opening the UI. And so anything that can help with that and reduce how much you're opening the map, I think is a good tip. So when you press your scanner button and swap in and out of it, there's actually a way you can fast travel. Let's do an example here where I'm on the ground. Basically, I'm turning on the scanner and I'm aiming at something I can fast travel to, like a place that I've been to, or just my ship, like in this example. And by aiming at it, now I can fast travel to my target, which in this case is my ship. And so I fast travel straight to my ship, just like that. And I can do that from pretty much anywhere. I just need to be able to fast travel at the time. I mean, here I am in the spaceship, right? I can pull up the map and look at the actual planet. And if I want to land, I've got to to find somewhere to land. So I can scroll around and go, okay, let's go here. Okay, let's go here. And then there's this as well, right? Or instead of ever opening all that up and faffing around with all that system, we can just open up our scanner, right? And I go, okay, let's have a look around. There's an industrial outpost there, and I can aim directly at it and land at it. Or if specifically I want to go to New Atlantis, which is what it wants me to do right now, we can aim and land directly at it without ever opening up the map and moving the sphere and the planet around. It's a lot easier just to open up the scanner and aim at the thing you want to go to and go to it. And this is something that I had to kind of work out on my own, so I figured you guys would benefit from that. Scanning can also be a good way to make money. As you can see, there is a survey to complete on each planet. On Mars here, there isn't actually that much to do. You just have to find 4 different resources, which as you can see I've done, and 2 of the geo features on the planet. I found the first one, which was a meteor crash site, and I'm standing in front of another, this unknown feature. So we're going to go over to it and scan it. And with it scanned, we've filled in the storm crater, which is what this actually is. With that, we've now completed the survey. As you can see, it's fully filled in. And with that, we should now have created our first survey note. As you can see, if we go to our inventory and go to notes, we have our survey data. Its estimated value is 9,000 credits, which is certainly nothing to ignore early days. You can take this to any merchant at a settlement and sell it, which is fine. However, there's a character called Vladimir on the space station, who you'll meet if you follow the main story. I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm just going to say you will meet him eventually, and after becoming friendly with him, you'll be able to tell him that, hey, I've got survey data to sell, and he will offer you better prices than your generic merchants. So it might actually be worth it to wait on these surveys, collecting a few, holding onto them, and then dumping them all when you meet Vlad for the maximum efficiency, for maximum profit. And there are ways to actually make this experience smoother. For example, you could level surveying, which gives a nice zoom to the scanning, but more importantly, improves the radius at which you can scan. 20 meters, 30 meters, 40 meters, and then 50 meters, it actually gets pretty far. I recommend you do this early because we're all going to be scanning pretty much everything as we're learning anyway. So getting this as a perk very early on will make completing surveys a smoother thing. So through these surveys, you can make some decent money in the early game. When it comes to scanning, there's another thing you should know about, which is the creatures and how it's always worth scanning them and completing the 100% scan as soon as possible. Because when you reach the 100% scan level on a creature, you get a lot of extra information. The HUD will now show you what resources they provide, where you should expect to find more, details about their health, their abilities, what they're resistant to, and so on. This, very importantly, can help you tackle these enemies in the future when you learn their weaknesses. Or if you need specific mats from them in the future, which you very well might, knowing where to gather them from in that future could be very helpful. A good example of this here then is, as part of the story, you'll encounter these weird rock creatures, which naturally have a lot of stone armor. And as it tells us, they're very weak to energy damage. Our mining cutter, for example, is super strong against rocks for obvious reasons, so they're super weak to your cutter. Knowing that means we can clean them up very effectively. And this also works for plants, whether you're looking for more information about the plants you're gathering or just where to find them again in the future, scanning them is well worth it. Next, let's talk about storage, because this is immediately a problem. Like in any Bethesda game or any exploring RPG, you pick up loads of stuff, especially if it says it has any valuable, and weapons and armor and equipment, it gets really heavy very quickly. Now, as it is a Bethesda game, you can use your companions. You do get a robot with you. If you talk to him, you can have a conversation, at which point you can see everything that Vasco has in his inventory, which, as you can see, I've dumped a lot on him, and this is how much we can weigh. So I've taken all the gear out of Vasco to show you the clip. So let's go into the ship. The ship is obviously going to be able to store and hold way more than me or a companion ever could. There's 2 sides to this. There's your cargo hold, and then there's a cockpit sort of inventory. So first in the cockpit, we have the captain's locker, which, as you can see, we can store stuff in, but it has only 40 mass. So that's barely anything. We hold 135. So there's alternative to that, a sort of terminal next to the captain's locker. Just on the left here by the actual pilot seat, we have the cargo hold. So let's interact with this. So I can take stuff that's already in there, as you can see, really quickly, or I can press R to go into the full inventory of it. As you can see, the mass for the cargo hold, 450, way more than the captain's hold, or me, or my companions. This is where you're going to get most of your storage. Initially, it'll show you the inventory of the ship, as it's called Frontier. This is how we can see that. Or we can press Q on a keyboard to swap to my inventory and go to all. As you can see at the bottom right, we can sort by name, by value, by weight. So everything at the top of the list here is the most weighty that we have. I don't need to be carrying around all these ship parts. Let's just put them on the ship. With all that stuff dumped, I'm now at half the max weight. I can actually move around again. And hey, Vasco isn't over encumbered himself. So make use of your own captain's locker on your first ship, and of course the cargo hold. If you want to extend how much you actually have in terms of storage, which is an important aspect of it, you can. You'll need to either enhance the cockpit and its space, or the cargo hold itself by adding more cargo modules and building around that. The problem with that is you make your ship bigger, you make it heavier, and you need stronger engines at that point. And also under the tech tree, once you make it to the second layer, you can also upgrade your cargo holds to have more capacity under the payloads skill tree. As you can see, it starts with a 10% increase, then 20, 30, and then 50% at rank 4, so very good to consider. Another really cool feature about what's in your cargo hold is if you go to a research station or a workbench, maybe you're going to do some research or crafting, it will pull from the things that you found, whether you're holding it or whether it's in your cargo hold. So I might not actually have these materials on me, but it might be in my ship's cargo. It will then pull from my ship's cargo, meaning I don't have to carry around all the materials and resources that I'm gathering and gaining weight with. Just a nice little quality of life tip. On that note, you don't have to buy a new ship or buy new parts and upgrade your current ship, especially the starter ship. You can do what I've done here and take one by force. There's all kinds of factions in the world, whether that's spacers, pirates, or whatever. Space bandits exist, and you can defeat them, and you can quote-unquote legally just take their stuff, including their literal ship, which when you go to pilot, when you sit in the seat, becomes your ship as soon as you go into orbit. You don't even have to leave the planet. At which point you can go to any of the technicians, any settlement, and you can see your roster of ships in case you want to go back to the starter one or swap between the fleet that you have. This spacer ship that I've stolen is a lot bigger than the Frontier and the first ship that you get. It comes with, of course, its own cargo, which will fully transfer from your starter ship, so everything that was in your ship gets brought here. There is a difference here though. The mass that this ship can take is lower at 220, despite its larger size. Naturally, in the captain's locker, there'll be stuff, and hey, we got some money, we got some ammo, and some crafting materials, which is nice. To steal a ship then, you can just be on a planet and find these pirates and spacers with a dock ship that you can just get on and steal, or in space you can fight other ships and shoot out their engines, which will slow them down and stop them, then you can come up close and board them. Whatever way you end up stealing it, as soon as you sit in that pilot seat, while also being in orbit, it will be yours, and you can run it however you want. This can be a great way to get upgraded ships that have other features and mechanics that yours just doesn't have without spending anything at all. Here's a tiny detail that's going to be nice to know. If you're in conversation with a relevant character, like when we're in the very beginning of the game, like I am here, you can choose to progress the interaction quickly, or you can choose to get like extra fluff, lore, and other details that aren't vital and won't really move things along. Basically, if the option's nearer the top, it's more likely to progress things, where if it's nearer the bottom, it's more likely to be fluff. The key tell though is if it has a question mark. Usually this is going to be fluff, whereas if it's just a statement, it's going to be a lot more progress based. With that, you should know which options to pick to progress things quickly. If you're not interested in hearing all the fluff and every conversation dialogue option that there is, of which there will be many. And for our final thing, I just want to talk about the lodge, which is a place that you'll sort of have as a base, a hub, a home, and through that you'll be given a guided tour which ends here in your room. Now obviously as you come in here there's a few things, including this storage safe which has unlimited mass space, which is obviously a very useful thing, and this as a hub is somewhere that you will come back to, so you can store things in here. The downside of storing things in this kind of storage space is that it's not associated with you or your ship, so when you're crafting it's not going to pull from it. However, if you've got some valuables that you want to sell later, or you just want to dump stuff in there and think about it in the future, you can. But for some reason the guided tour basically takes you to the kitchen and up here into your room, and that's it. But there's actually something slightly more interesting down below that you don't want to miss. So by the entrance, as you are going into the main room, instead of going in there, you can turn right and unlock the door once you've joined with the lodge key. This will open up this next room, and then you can head down into the basement of the lodge, which again, it's so crazy they don't actually highlight this in the tour. In here is a bunch of stuff. A lab to use, there's a cooking station, so you don't have to go to the kitchen to specifically do that. We have a mission board, and we have a workbench, very important for your crafting that you should be doing a lot of generally in this game. There's the industrial workbench, and then the spacesuit workbench, and then finally the weapon workbench. So lots of different types of crafting to consider. Another detail about this little area is, yeah, there's weapons and some ammo you can grab, but just like that safe in your bedroom, there's this really unassuming storage box in the middle, right? The mass is infinite, just like the safe, so we can absolutely dump resources here, probably crafting resources, considering it's such a good workshop for all the crafting and stuff like that you'll probably be doing down here. Being aware of this, though, should be helpful to everyone. But with that, we have a bunch of hopefully helpful things that should help your early days of Starfield. If you guys do have any extra tips that you've learned, especially things the game isn't going to tell you or explain properly, let us know in the comments. Chances are you might help someone, but obviously do avoid spoilers if you can. For now, though, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.